Right.
But we should probably pivot the conversation to...
Let's pivot.
Probably religion, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, I don't care, my guy.
Well, I mean, it's a Sunday, to be fair, and I've been doing a good amount of, I suppose, biblical study as far as living a spiritual life goes, because it's definitely easier said than done.
Oh yeah.
And what's interesting is that I get the impression that a lot of Christians nowadays kind of use it as like a self-help thing, as a means of coping with, as we've talked about in the past, like nihilism, and that's a common criticism of Christianity and religion in general. It's the opiate of the masses.
Yeah.
It's described.
And Christianity was always considered the poor man's religion.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have nothing, there were promises of mansions and gold and silver and precious gems and all these other things. So in a lot of ways, people considered it the poor man's religion.
Yep, and the rich would use it to oppress the poor.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
the Catholics.
Which is accurate to a degree. But people who view Christianity in that sense don't acknowledge the spiritual/psychological benefits of believing it doctrinally, as well as believing it in practice. And there's a bit of a difference, because you could say, well, believing it doctrinally is believing it in practice, but
at face value you could, but there's more to it than
to
that.
put it one way, there are different levels of knowledge, just like the Bible. The Hebrew word for know is comparable to the word love. And I think it's a fairly human thing to say that there are different levels of love. There was a gentleman that you, Johnny, showed me recently. What was his name?
John Butler.
John Butler. I was about to say Ben Butler for some reason. But anyways, this is a point that he made as well. Was that there are different levels of consciousness, knowledge, and love. And that implies that there is a level of awareness that's universal, in the sense that in order for you to begin to know something, in even saying for you to begin something, there's an origin point. There's a point where anybody can work with a given idea.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, the idea is something along the lines of living a good life, an objectively good life, and understanding the universal principles that are involved in living a good life. And that's the basis of wisdom. But to counter that, it could be very easy to make everything an abstraction and then take advantage of people. And that's the claim that many people who are skeptics towards Christianity, that's the claim that they made, which, poor man's religion, like you said.
A big guy who did this was very funny, and I agree with over half of what he said, but a guy by the name of Mr. George Carlin.
George Carlin.
Rest in peace.
Good comedian.
Half the crap he said about religion was true.
Oh, absolutely. But it's one thing to point out the negative traits of something, and it's another to point out the negative
traits. Throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Exactly. To point out the negative traits and, in doing as much, obfuscate the positive. That's the importance of objectivity, and rejecting your own ego, your own will to be seen as intelligent, and subject that to the truth, which is an inherently Christian claim. The primary idea of Christianity is, in some capacity, to take up your cross and follow after Christ. Christ being the Son of God, literally, and to believe in him is a psychologically complex idea, because in essence you're saying that God, who is just like the embodiment of everything good and everything true, came as a human being in the flesh, and as a result of this, created a way for man to be saved existentially from their sin, their separation from God. Because, I mean, the biblical idea of sin is twofold. It's separation from God, and it's also an archery term, which means to miss your mark. So, and that's an interesting idea just on a pragmatic level, because it's kind of what every human being faces universally.
Yeah.
Like, nobody can perfectly set an aim and hit it. You know, like, this is just the crux of the human condition is sin.
Yeah.
And that's a remarkable thing to realize, that this knowledge, as redundant as it sounds, it was known by just non-scientific people, fundamentally. Like, they weren't, like, it was pre-Enlightenment. This was like thousands of years ago, just farmers who came up with these, ideas, fundamentally speaking. And they knew. Like, this is a universal human trait, old as time itself. Like, we're imperfect. There's no, like, they didn't have the Western idea of their lives being valuable. They had to make their own value.